Well, we have three guests, actually. Olivia, are you ready to take the floor?
Ready.
Olivia Sanchez, Olivia Crosby Sanchez,
Yes.
our Government Affairs, what's her title?
Director, Government Affairs Director.
Director of
Yes.
Government Affairs with CPAR.
Yes.
And she's going to give us a little information about the just finished, or Congress is still in session on the state level. I'll let you do it.
Yeah, no,
This
that's
is Olivia.
fine. I think Brian could do it if he really wanted to, guys. I love working with him, especially on the Government Affairs Committee, because he's so involved with everything too. So did anybody, I know Catrice, you attended GUARD, Kara, you attended GUARD, did you attend GUARD? Yes,
I
you
was
could just
on
say
one
yes.
of the phone
I'm just
calls.
kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on the Trumbull phone call.
Okay, cool. So Florida Realtors just put out, their public policy team just had their Great American Realtor Days, where typically we're always in Tallahassee, kind of storming the halls of the Capitol, meeting with the legislators, and just kind of running home what the Florida Realtors public policy team does on a 24-hour basis, pretty much, especially during session. So obviously the state legislature is in session right now. We just finished GUARD last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't keep up. I'm 5 months pregnant and have a 1-year-old at home, so it was either one week or 2 weeks ago. But anyway, so basically the biggest thing that came out of that, obviously the business rent tax. Brian and I have had so many conversations about that, because that really just affects you guys as commercial practitioners, and it affects our state and businesses coming here. We're the only state that has a business rent tax or commercial lease tax. You can call it either or. So it is down to 5.5 now, but if you'll see on y'all's records, it's 6.5 because Bay County actually charges an extra 1% on top of that. I was trying to do research to see how many counties do that in the state. There's actually only one county in the state of Florida that doesn't add an additional tax on that, and it's Citrus County. And then the highest is a 2.5%, and that is Hillsborough County. So let's just be thankful that we're not in Hillsborough County. So obviously each year, Florida Realtors really tries to chip away at the business rent tax. It started out at 7.5 years ago, down to 5.5 now. I'll be honest, I'm really optimistic now. I found out some more information yesterday. Originally, coming into session, they thought that they were going to have $7 billion less in the state budget than normal. So that is a huge cut to work with. Then session started, and they thought, okay, it's only going to be $3 billion, so maybe it's not as bad as we thought. I had a meeting with Trumbull yesterday with the chamber, something I'm involved in, and all of the federal funds for all the stimulus packages that have passed, and there's probably going to be a fourth one that is going to pass soon. So that just put a ton of money on our state. And they actually don't know what to do with it. Those are his exact words. I was like, let's not say that out loud. Many of you know he's the appropriations chair, which is a huge deal for our area. So they're not nervous about things anymore, because now we have lots of funds and money to work with at the state level, which is super encouraging. So hearing that, I thought, okay, maybe we could get it down to even 5.4%. I don't care. I'll take anything at this point, because it actually hasn't gone down at all since 2019. So each year they obviously try and chip away at it. Last year they were working with a really tight budget, and this year they thought they were going to be as well, but fourth week into session they figured out it won't be as tight as they thought. So we're just crossing our fingers that it will be chipped away a little bit again. With that being said, I think we're going to see a lot of funds trickle down our way too, with like affordable housing, especially with those stimulus funds coming in. Obviously the federal government will earmark that and have certain guidelines, but we've dealt with it before a little bit last year with COVID-19, so we're thinking hopefully it could be similar, and a lot of that can go into buying a home or homeowners who need assistance. Another big thing is the COVID-19 liability protection bill. That's Senate Bill, House Bill 7, Senate Bill 72. So it's passed the Senate, it first passed the House, went to the Senate, it passed this week, and then it actually is heading back to the House to pass. It should pass tomorrow. They added a couple things in the Senate, but basically that's going to be to protect our businesses, really not to get sued from different COVID-19 things. There is a lot of support behind both of those bills, so we're not too worried about that. So we're thinking that's going to be Florida Realtors' first win of the session. And then locally speaking, we have a municipal election next month in April, and it's April 20th. Early voting is April 12th through the 16th. I will say that I hope all of you voted in the general election, but if you did not, you could have voted at 7 different locations, and you could have voted at any of them. Did anybody notice that? Yes, so that was super nice. Unfortunately, you're not gonna have that in the municipal election. They did not get that granted again. So you do have assigned polling locations. Go back and check those out, which one is your assigned polling location, because a lot of them were destroyed, obviously, from the hurricane. So one thing that CPAR is supporting on that is the city referendum. If you did vote last year in the general election, the last thing on your ballot was a county referendum, and that was to continue granting authority to the county commission for tax abatements for new businesses coming in or existing businesses expanding. That did pass. We spent a lot, I think we spent about $25,000 of Florida Realtors money on that to campaign for that, to vote yes on that. It's coming up again, but on the city level. So it'll be Panama City and Lynn Haven. So we have another $25,000 from Florida Realtors that we've got that we are you may have received mailers on that. There's a lot of mailers going out. Text messages and social media ads. So you may see that. So we encourage you to vote yes on that referendum to get our economic growth back up. And I think that's a good enough update. Is that
Great
okay,
update.
Brian?
Thank you very much.
All right.
Absolutely wonderful. Yes?
If I may, because this young lady seems to be in the know on things, so do you have anything you can share on where your organization stands with the Bay District School Board's focus on raising that money?
Yes, I can talk about that. We have actually decided not to take a position on that because there's so much controversy in the county. Obviously, you can look at it 2 sides. One, it's a tax increase. Typically, you don't stand for that, but at the same time, you can look at it and say, hey, this is going to help our schools. Maybe we can get some teachers back here. Maybe we can sell some houses. So there's really 2 ways to look at that. The Governmental Affairs Committee decided not to take a position on that.
When is that on the ballot?
It's on April 20th or April 12th to the 16th if you early vote. Yeah, so it'll
That's
be on that.
definitely one of the functions of the Government Affairs Committee, which was last year was its first year, although we had government affairs activity under the RPAC committee. But now the government affairs can get more into the specific issues like that. But if they want to feel that it is a good idea for our association to take a stand, pro or con, then they take that to the board. And then the board will decide. And if the board feels that we should query the membership, then that's what would happen. But even at the government committee level, it seemed most appropriate not to put your foot on one vote or the dock there. Just
Brian,
do
I can
something.
tell you, I'm on the board of the Bay County Chamber, and they made the same decision.
Right.
They're not gonna.
We had that information in front of us too, yes. And I'm so glad. Thanks, Lisa. One thing about commercial activity, so if you're dealing with a lease and you're not that familiar with leases and you're learning about them and whatnot, or even if you've been doing them for years, make sure that your client knows the landlord has to pay that 6.5% tax on leased income. But keep your eye on it. If you're doing a 5-year lease, you can't make that stay for 5 years because it could come down 1/4% next year and another 1/4% or 0.5%. And anything we can do to get that thing chipped down means a better value for our lease tenants. So keep an eye on that. Once again, as Olivia said, it was 7.5 at one point, and we took it down 1/4%, 4 times, and now we're where we are. So thanks, Olivia. Really appreciate you. And I haven't said hi to Zach. Zach is our co-chair, and he will be taking my place next year. So I'm excited about that. Thanks, Zach. Now, I've asked Tom Neubauer, and for those of you who haven't met Tom, you've seen his name and know of him. He is, besides working as the head of his real estate company, he is very active with the Tyndall Air Force Base. And I don't even know all the titles and the committees you serve on, so I'm not going to try to butcher any of it. But he offered to give us a quick update about what's happening with Tyndall, because we've seen so much in the news, so much is speculation, so much is rumor. And it's a great opportunity to hear a word or two from Tom. So thank you, Tom.
So you're not going to define quick for me, right?
No, that's up to Ed.
So I got a lot I could tell you, but I won't
But
get
I
into
think Ed's
details.
going to enjoy the information too.
Oh, he gets it, man. There's no problem with that. So you've probably heard that Tyndall is getting $4.2 billion in rebuild costs. So that's a lot of money. When you think about it, the The total Air Force budget requests for MILCON, military construction projects across the entire world, is $875 million this year. Tyndall is getting $4.2 billion. And what's holding that up is something called a record of decision. They complete the environmental impact statement, and that was done actually about 6 months ago. It was submitted to the Pentagon and given to the Secretary of the Air Force on the 7th of January, so we thought, oh, on the 8th we're gonna get our bucks. Well, it didn't happen. And then, you know, it changed administrations and people were getting really nervous. Is the money gonna go away? And I was getting calls every day from contractors and people saying, what happened? Well, it was delayed and probably will come out tomorrow. And I check every morning at 5 a.m. My alarm goes off and I look at the Federal Register and it's not there. And my wife gets upset. She says, why'd you wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning? So I'm hoping that tomorrow's my last day to do that and the money will be there. But once the money's there, the military construction, about $3.2 billion of that money is for building new stuff. And already about half of that is obligated under contract. And by the end of this year, they'll be 70% obligated. And the new PMO for Tyndall said that by middle of next year, all of it will be obligated. And that's the key. Once it's obligated in the ground, it can't go away. So generally speaking, that money is pretty insulated anyway. When they wrote the bill, there was some language put in there really to protect the bill from the money from not being used for the wall, right? Well, it just happened to work out for us that that same language is keeping it from going anywhere else. It's not scorecarded money, which means that the Air Force budget or the DoD budget is not affected by this. It's an emergency supplemental totally outside DoD. So the only place they can use any of this money is for another disaster, which right now they don't have anything to deal with. So I'm really happy about that part. But what's been going on at Tyndall is they got authorized to tear down over 500 buildings, 569 of them, and about 165 of those are gone now. And the rest of them will happen as they replace them with the new stuff. So they've been busy tearing all that stuff down. We're expecting, you know, when they gave $4.2 billion to Tyndall, the Air Force Secretary and the Chief of Staff, I'm on their board, said, we do want something from the community. We want to know if you've got sufficient housing, if you've got quality of life standard for our young airmen that are coming in, what our school system looks like, and do you have the capacity to surge for all these people coming to the base? They give a long list of things, and those are all amendments to what they call the strategic basing process. So my job for the last year has been going up every couple of months and providing a detailed update on where we are in our pipeline with housing, how the school system's doing. There's going to be a charter school at Tyndall, we believe. It's already guaranteed to be a K-8. And Florida State is working on adding that in sort of a charter school. They're requesting the legislature to do a third one of those for Florida State University. So that's going to be a game changer for the base. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on there. I can tell you that we'll have a meeting in the Pentagon on the 9th, and it'll be kind of the point where they're assured that we have the capacity to surge. I think there's 18,000 entitled lots in the county right now. The county's done a great job of keeping up with, you know, how many are in the pipeline getting permitted. And I think it's 7,600 apartment units in process. So when you look at all that capacity, and we can convince the Air Force that we can take this surge of people, I think it'll make it a little bit easier for them.
A quick question, Tom.
Yes.
How is the new K-8 charter school going to affect Tyndall Elementary? Are they going to use that location, or is that
Same location. So that the K-6 goes to K-8, and then when they eventually go to this charter school concept that Florida State has the option to do, if that's granted, they will eventually do a high school level there.
Okay.
So we'll need facilities for gyms and all that other stuff that goes on with that. But that's kind of a long-term plan.
Sure.
And this is going to be an incremental build. It's going to take 5 years, and about 3,000 contractors will be in our backyard. So that will be the first group of people we have to take care of. We thought at first they'd move all these workers on base, and they'd put them in this facility they call the TRAV. And more of the contractors say, no, I'm sending entire families there. They're not going to, leave for 6 months and come home. They're sending families. So this TRAV is now down to like 100 spaces for RVs and that kind of thing. So we're going to see a big surge of that probably by June of this year, maybe July. So all the other missions at Tyndall are going on well. We lost the F-22s. They're over at Eglin. And so what's going on is our pilots are being trained in the simulators, and their syllabus for class syllabus is at Tyndall. They get in a car and they drive to Eglin, they fly a jet, and they come back and it's not working that well. I mean, they're producing pilots, but eventually those jets will go to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, and then we'll have F-35s fill that gap. So anyway, hopefully I have an announcement in the next day or so. Any questions? I'm surprised.
You mentioned about quality of life. How is that going? I mean,
Good. You know, one of the things they look at is license reciprocity. And one of the boards I'm on is called the Florida Defense Port Task Force. We have 4 legislators, 11 retired military members, and there's 12 of us. Basically, it's the governor's task force. And what they have done over the last 5 years is create a Florida military-friendly guide, which is a brand new version out, and I got some in my car, that has 82 legislative initiatives that support military members and their families, and including license reciprocity. So your spouse moves here with you, and the spouse is an attorney in another state. They can go practice immediately in the state of Florida under another attorney's license. Those kinds of things. And that's what we're looking for.
Tom, when do you anticipate the F-35s and the airmen that come with that all filtering in here? Is it 5 years or?
No, the first bed down will be in June of 2023, and they're staying on schedule. And you know, our EAS approved 4 squadrons of F-35s. Most people don't know that. And Lockheed Martin is scheduling for 4 squadrons, but only 3 are slated to be here. So all the F-35s for the West Coast are at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. We are going to be the East Coast operational base, which is a big deal. Questions? I won't take time away from our
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I just thought of a question. Tom, I just thought of a question. When we're talking to people who call us and say, I'm looking for property, I'm going to develop stuff, what is, in your activity with Tyndall, what are we most efficient in to help make this all happen? In other words, what type of services, what type of facilities do we need here in Callaway or in our county? Most.
It all goes back to that quality of life, and for airmen to move here from the desert, we've got great quality of life. I remember we were out there in Alamogordo. They said, I just want to be able to go to a Target and not drive 40 minutes. And so they'd be excited to be here. But if they're coming from a lot of other places, they'll be a little bit higher standards. So, you know, we're going to have,
I mean, are we looking for childcare? Are we looking for
they're building,
veterinarians?
They just broke ground on a
more retail.
Tyndall.
Yeah.
And there'll be now, if the MQ-9 wing comes in, there'll be 24/7 people, just like at AFNOR.
Right.
And I should mention that Air Forces Northern, which has been at Tyndall a long time, they're responsible for defending the airspace for the entire continental United States, 24/7. They have been selected to be the arm of Space Force. So the only AOC that will be part of Space Force, and that's going to be a big deal about a year from now.
Awesome. Great. Well, and now we get to, after already some amazing information, we get to our guest speaker. Mr. Ed Cook is the city manager of Callaway, and I have personally, Santa Fe, sure. I mean, I have personally been able to work with Eddie on bringing a couple of projects like the one we're sitting in today, like the one next door, and I can tell you he's progressive. He wants to work with us. He wants to work with people looking to renovate and build in this city. I'm curious about if we're looking at targeting more potential commercial property in terms of zoning and expanding, but Eddie's got a program for us, so we appreciate you being here, Ed. Thank you.
Well, guys, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it. And one of the things that I wanted to do is just give you a little update, because, you know, most of the time whenever you talk about what's available, we need to talk about not only what's available, but can our infrastructure hold it? And I think that some of the things I want to share with you today in words of what most people refer to as infrastructure. So we're focusing across the board. The city's been working on, I've actually been working on this for about 3 years now. But one of the big things that some of the things that we're dealing with, walkable Callaway, we've got sidewalk projects going in across the board. All of these are actually LAP funded project. That's called a local area project. It's managed through FDOT. This money is available for everybody. It's very difficult money, and you have to have trained staff to be able to do it. And Callaway's been super successful. We carry almost 90 to 95% of all their projects because no one else wants to deal with it. But when you look at the amounts of money that we're getting, I've probably got $4 to $6 million out of lap projects to put stuff in for sidewalks. So right now we're currently finishing up Wallace Road. Boat race is next. It's coming up next year. South Bertha Road, we're going to be putting sidewalks on it. Cherry Street, we have two versions of Cherry Street. We talk about East Cherry Street, which is going over into Parker and Springfield, and we're putting sidewalks over there because we've got so many, as I refer to them, as goat trails. And then, of course, Cherry Street itself, which is that's our destination street. I mean, it really is. Even though it's kind of a mixture of commercial and homes and everything else, that really is the one destination street. So we're currently putting sidewalks on both the north and south side, and we are going to completely recrown and resurface that whole entire street, and it's going to be a beautiful street when we get done with it. We got a roundabout's going to be going in. If anybody's familiar with Bertha and Boat Race down there, that's a very horrible intersection, and so I'm in the middle of an eminent domain fight with the tower company there. They don't like me, and so we're going to be fixing those problems down there. Bertha Bridge, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that area. It's right there at what's called Fox Lake and that area. That bridge is completely deteriorated. It's gone. I mean, it's going to fall apart any time. Right now, we're actually we've got a bypass pump that's pumping sewer down the sidewalk in pipes because it's falling apart. But we actually expect to start reconstruction on that in the next 3 months. So we're going to be doing that. Another thing that I think is very pertinent is when we start talking about the commercial areas and everything else. Highway 22. This has been on their radar for a long time that they wanted to widen 22. I met with, well, it just so happens that our mayor is the chairman of the TPO, and we have another active commissioner that serves on there along with myself. We went to DOT and gave a big, huge presentation on the flooding that was going on actually right in front of City Hall, because we lost at least 4 cars every time. They hydroplane and they go in the ditch and they flood out and do all that. But we managed to get this project split into 2 projects, which is basically from Star Avenue to Tyndall is phase 1, and then from Tyndall into Springfield is phase 2. And we got them to split it, move this project up, and we're expecting the funding to go through. We're going to be signing off on the long-range plans that are coming up. So hopefully we're going to get 22 widened. It should be a 4-lane. With sidewalks on both sides, and that'll be from Star Avenue all the way up to Tyndall. And then from the next phase would be from there on, but they're not going to do that 4-lane anymore. They're going to leave it a 3-lane so they don't have to replace the bridge. But we did talk them into landscaping that particular area to make it more appealing to everybody that comes up in that way. So our stormwater improvements is something that I think is very pertinent, especially for this area. It's real funny. I have people from back in my home state of Arkansas. They go, so what do you do with all your stormwater? And I said, well, there's this great big stormwater detention pond called the Gulf. We just got to try to get it to there. But we actually, after the storm, we went after an NRCS grant, and we received $2.3 million, and we have already cleaned out all of our stormwater ditches in the city. When Sally hit, we didn't flood a home. We were pretty happy about that. We didn't have any reportables out of that. And then we've got 2 large, I've got them listed as lakes, but the truth of the matter is I had them redesignated into stormwater ponds, and that's Fox Lake and everything else. Both of those lakes are in really, really bad shape, where hopefully by the end of the year we'll be starting to clean up on both of those lakes. Which the one lake, Fox Lake, is right there on Bertha. We own all that land. And once we fix that infrastructure problem and we get that bridge replaced, we're actually going to put a park there, and so that's going to add to our park systems. It's going to be real beautiful. We have plans for huge fountains out in the middle of the lake because, you know, when people come to the area, that's the one thing you need to be able to see the beauty of the area. Mm-hmm. And so that being said, you know, when you start talking like driving down 22, one of my projects last year was you would go across Callaway Bayou and you just saw the bridge. And we cleaned out both sides so that you could see the water on both sides. And it wasn't long after that before that property kind of kicked back up out there where the Callaway Bayou Landing is talking about. One thing too, water and sewer capacity for the city. We've completely looped all of our water. Our water is great. We have plenty of capacity to handle anything that goes through. And sewer also is, we're 100% totally compatible. In fact, our sewer infrastructure, in my opinion, is one of the best. After the hurricane, you know, everybody lost power. Our emergency plans had it so that within a day we were in place and our sewer systems were back up, even though there wasn't water, people were still using the bathroom. But our sewer system was actually back up. We did not drop a lick of sewer on the ground after Hurricane Michael, and that has a lot to do with how we do that. And of course, thinking farther ahead, we actually own the water service all the way to Tram Road. So with the Gulf Coast Parkway coming in, there's another development that's coming in over on the east side right now, and we're working with them because when they put in their infrastructure, they're going to have to put in water and sewer. We're going to go ahead and partner with them to upsize these pipes because that's going to be the second leg to the looping system that's going to take care of Gulf Coast Parkway when that comes in. And that is something that we're really excited about because we know that that area is going to be our future growth area. And finally, and of course, you know, fire and police. Our fire department, I get on to them constantly because they put fires out too quick. And I'm like, guys, there's some things you just need to let burn. I tell them the next time something happens, something's going to happen to a fire truck or y'all are going to get caught up in Sandy Creek or something, just let it go. But no, they pride themselves on being able to do that. And of course, our police department is, we're run through the Bay County Sheriff's Office. And I'm gonna tell you what, you wanna talk about an incredible partnership and what an incredible sheriff's office that Bay County has. You know, it's one thing to have the substation over here and have them over here working with us, but we have access to the SWAT team, we have access to the drug task force, we have access to the Swift water team, we have access to helicopters, we have access to all of that. At a phone call, we can have them over here almost immediately. And, you know, I'm actually kind of proud. This is horrible, but when I got here, the first thing they talked about was how bad the drug problem was in Callaway. Within 3 weeks, I went and told the sheriff, I said, I want the drug task force over here, and I want you to just hammer it. And he said, you're not going to be able to handle the bad publicity you're going to get if we do that. And I said, look, I'm either going to have to handle it on the front end or handle it on the back end. I'd rather let's handle it on the front end. And you know, we've not had a drug arrest in the city in almost a year now. We've been doing really, really well. We have had the ones that are traveling through and they stop at the hotel. Yeah, well, we got a couple of those. But the only reason we catch them is because they're following them. And I'm like, would you just let them pass on through before you stop? Also, I do want to talk a little bit about the city's financial status because the city's financial status is actually, we're in phenomenal shape. Even after the storm, you know, we did have to go out and get a $15 million loan because we couldn't float the $20 million worth of damage that we had to deal with right off the bat. But I'll tell you something, out of the $15 million line of credit we got, we only took 8 out and we only had it out for 6 months and we paid it back. City is financially and 100% safe and sound. I've got a finance director that balances to the penny plus 0.1, and I don't know how he does it, but he does it every time. And he is really phenomenal. We're set and ready to go with future growth and future progress. We've got the funds ready and available, and I know Brian here, he's done a lot. We'll do whatever we can to work with developers that want to come in here. We are working on multiple ways to come up with some economic incentives to help them get in here. It's a little bit more difficult in the state of Florida than it was back in Arkansas, but that's okay. I'm still learning how to play the tricks and everything else. Right now, some of the things we have 2 hotels now that are under construction. I'm working with Next Site on 2 other hotels that are looking in the area. Restaurants, of course, you've seen the rib crib. We've got a Soul Chickens that's going to come over here. We have a family concept restaurant, and we have 2 or 3 fast food companies that are also looking right now to come over here. So, and most of it stems from the base. I mean, that's what it is. We're selling the base right now, you know, and they're coming quick. One of the neat things is DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, just put out a revitalization grant. If you read that grant, because there was a lot of push out there, everybody was talking about how this grant was going to happen. But if you read the fine lines of the grant, which I strongly suggest people do before they get all excited, it was vicious on how you could actually apply for that money. But the large strip mall down here were Rose's and Grocery Outlet. They couldn't make the ends meet with their insurance money versus what it was going to take to rehabilitate that. So we actually had went to DEO with them on board with this, and so this is actually a private partnership grant where DEO is going to fund. They pledged their insurance money, so they're gonna fund the difference in the cost. So we're going to be able to rehabilitate that whole entire strip mall, along with fixing the parking lot, the out parcels, and everything else. And we're really excited about being a partner with that. So that's just another thing the city's looking to do. We're constantly looking to do what we can when it comes to a public partnership, because there's so many rules and restrictions on it. Grocery stores, we've got one right now that's planned, and we got one that's looking. And I was just happy to know we had one, but now let's just get them all fighting for each other. So, I will cover a little bit about what we got going in our housing market. These are the current projects that are actually underway right now that's either got some sort of zoning or we're in negotiations and talking with them. But the great thing about it is right now we're looking at just under 3,000 homes, and these are not even I don't even have the ones listed that we're currently working with that they haven't turned in either zoning applications or whatever to do all that. So, we're trying to be ready for Tyndall when they come. We really are. We think they're going to be there. So that's really about just a quick overview. I just wanted to let y'all know what we've got going on over here. So when you're out selling the market, y'all feel free. Y'all be happy to give me a call, and I will go with you and sit down with whoever you want to sit with, and we can find stuff and we'll make it happen. Yes, sir.
Share a little bit about a couple of the incentives you have, one being a demolition matching, or at least a demolition increase, not necessarily matching.
Sure. So that's one of the things. So we had 7 commercial properties that were badly damaged, and that's actually something I should have put in the slide, and I didn't do it. So these 7 commercial properties, the city went through, and because FEMA came swooping down here and said, "Hey, we've got this PPDR and CPDR program, and we will help you out." And because I'm like, it's going to take $3 million for me to tear all the residential and commercial buildings down. And unfortunately, after submitting for the same projects 6 times, and they lost all 6 of them. I don't know how they lose them in a computer system, but they lose them. They actually came back, and after inviting us to be part of the program, we found out that they didn't know how to administer their own program, and we were denied. And then they said, "Okay, great, you've got your denial. Now just go ahead and appeal it, and we'll get this thing going for you." I'm like, "No, I trusted you the first time. We're going after it." So what we did was we have some in our CRA, which is most of the commercial corridors anyway. We have some what we call our demolition grant. And so what we did was we stacked up and said, okay, if somebody owned the property and they needed to demo it, and they owned it before the storm, that we would match money on that property up to a $10,000 match. So if it costs 20, they're going to pay 10, we're going to pay 10. And so we did that, and we've actually successfully now, we've tore down 5. 4, the one next door is going to be next. They actually asked for their application this morning. We sent it to them, so I don't know if you was on any of that, but yeah. So, but if they purchased property after the storm, so in other words, they're a new developer that's coming in, we actually raised our match up to $20,000. So that's just another way that we can continue to help. And we entertain economic incentives such as tax abatements and stuff like that. We can't do much with the impact fees because with the future growth that's coming, I've got to be able to fund it. So it's very difficult for us knowing we're going to have to put in all these new roads and put in all this new infrastructure, and we've already started plans for it, but then going, how are we going to fund it? Well, that's where the impact fee money is going. So it's very difficult for us to weigh the impact fees knowing the expenses that we're going to have coming in the front end. But if somebody come for us and said, hey, would you be willing to give me a 10-year tax abatement on the property taxes? Yeah, we'll listen. We'll entertain anything, just as a means to go ahead and push them over and give them a little something that they're not getting across the street or across the county. So, and that's just some of the ways, and we're trying desperately to come up with all sorts of things. We're working on some programs where we can actually possibly even waive, I'm sorry, not waive impact fees, but delay impact fees and use the property tax money to pay the impact fees. Because impact fees, they're all done by state. So state regulates impact fees 100% what you can do with it. But, you know, if we're willing to give a tax abatement on property taxes for 10 years, if somebody comes forward and we're sitting in a position where they need, oh, well, you know, we're $100,000 off on our books to be able to make this project work. Well, I tell you what, go ahead and let's take this impact fee and we'll set it up and we'll let your property taxes pay it for the next 10 years. And that's becoming more and more attractive as we kind of go forward. We're trying to think really far outside the box. And the great thing is I'm not the expert. So if anybody has any ideas, please come and talk to me, because if I can make it work, I will.